Hey guys, here's practice test number 2 to help you guys study for your guys' finals, okay? So, let's take a look at the first couple problems, or the first unit, which is factoring. So this one, you guys, since the coefficient of this trinomial is a is equals to 1, that means you guys can factor using your guys' x method. So, a times c up top, b on the bottom, so you guys get 9 up top. 1 times 9 is 9. And your b value, guys, is negative 10. So what two things multiply to 9, but when you guys add it to give you negative 10, that's negative 9 times negative 1. And because a is equals to 1, you guys just use your two side numbers as part of your guys' factors. So a minus 9 is one factor, and a minus 1 is the other factor, which should have been c. Okay, that one is c. Number 2. Okay, this one. Now, one thing that you guys should recognize is that you guys can factor or divide each term by 2 and factor each term by n. So we can factor out a 2n, so divide each one by 2n. We're left with n squared plus 5n plus 6. And now this is an a equals 1 scenario, which means you guys do your x method only inside of the parentheses. A times c up top, b on the bottom, so you guys get 6 and 5. Two things that multiply to 6, but when you guys add it gets you 5. That is 5 and 1. So drop down the 2n, n plus 5, and then n plus 1. Because remember, you use the two side numbers because a is equals to 1. So this one's going to be, ooh, that is my mistake. 5 plus 1 is not 5. So it should be 3 times 2. Because 3 times 2 is 6, but 3 plus 2 is 5. These would be our new side numbers now, which is n plus 3 and n plus 2. So that is going to be C. That one will be C. Number 3. So now we can't factor out anything from here, you guys. So this is an a is greater than 1 case. So we still do x method, but then we got to factor by grouping. So a times a at the top, b on the bottom. 3 times a is 24. Your b value is 10. The two numbers that multiply to 24, but when added gives you guys 10. That's 6 and 4. But because a is greater than 1, we gotta use our two side numbers, but we gotta factor by grouping. So the first term first, the 6 and the 4 are gonna be the sum of your guys' middle term, and then write down your guys' last term. And then here we group the first two terms and group the last two, and then you guys factor what you can from each. So you guys can factor a 3x out from here to get x plus 2, and you guys can factor out a 4 from there to get x plus 2. And because these both match, then we can change our factor to be 3x plus 4 times x plus 2, which is going to be b. Number 4, now we can factor out a 3 from each term. So we factor out a 3 to get 5a squared minus 17a minus 12. And then this is another a is greater than 1 case. So we gotta do x method, and then we gotta factor by grouping. So a times c up top, b on the bottom. 5 times negative 12 is negative 60. Negative 17 on the bottom. So the two factors that multiply negative 60, but when added gives you guys negative 17, that's negative 20 and 3. So remember, first term, the two middle terms, and the last term. Those are the four we're going to draw. Right, so 5a squared minus 20a plus 3a minus 12. So we factor the first two, and we group the first two and group the last two. So you guys factor out a 5a from here to get a minus 4, and factor out a 3 from there, you guys, to get a minus 4. So remember to drop down the 3. So we get 3, 5a plus 3 times a minus 4, which which is going to be B. Number 5. Okay, so this, you guys, is factoring by a difference of squares. So both of them you can square root, and there's a minus sign in between. So if we square root both of these, then it will produce our factoring for different squares. So what times itself is 25a squared? That's 5a times 5a. What times itself is 16? That's 4 times 4. So we get plus and minus. 5a plus 4 times 5a minus 4, which is going to be D. Now, for 6, now, before we even start factoring, we can factor out a 2. So we can factor out a 2 from both of these. So 2 times 9n squared minus 16, and then we can square root both of these to do our factoring by a difference of squares. So what times what is 9n squared? That's 3n times 3n. What times itself is 16? That's 4 times 4. Plus and minus. So we're going to get A. That one's going to be A. Okay, so here we have sum and difference of cubes. So this is where you guys have to figure out what times itself 3 times is that number. So this is where we use our acronym of SOAP, right? Same, opposite, always positive. So you guys do have to remember these formulas right here. So this one, if we cube root this one and this one, well, what times itself 3 times is 125x to the third? That's 5x. What times itself 3 times is 27? That is 3. So then we just follow this formula right there. A minus b, that's 5x minus 3. Follow the formula. A squared, that's 5x to the second, so 25x squared, right? 5x times 5x is 25x squared. A times b, 5x times 3 is 15x. And b squared, you guys, that's 3 to the second power, which is 9. So that is going to be A, you guys. That's going to be A. Here, okay, so we have 4 terms, you guys. So one strategy for factoring out 4 terms is by the grouping method. So what can you guys factor out from the first grouping? 3 from 29 to 9, and you can factor out 2 n's from n to the third and n squared. So divide each of these by 3n squared, so we get 7n minus 3. And then if you guys factor out a 4 from there, you guys would get 7n minus 3. So we get 3n squared plus 4, 7n minus 3, which is going to be D. That one is going to be part D. Alright, so that's the factoring unit. Now we're going to simplify some square roots. So this is where you guys draw a prime factorization tree, and then you guys find your factors and list out all the primes, right? So 18 times 10 is a factor, factors of 10, 5 and 2, factors of 18, 3 and 6, factor of 6, 3 and 2. So we have pairs of 3's, right? Pairs of 2's, and we have a leftover of a 5. So pairs of 3's times pairs of 2's, all square root of the leftover, which is a 5. So that's 6 square root 5, which is A. Number 10, okay, the only difference between this one and the number 9 is that's a negative. So you guys take out the negative sign by putting an I, because I is equal to the square root of negative 1. So 2 times 49 is 98. 7 times 7 is 49. Pairs of 7's, leftover of a 2. So we got pair of 7 on the outside, leftover on the inside, I. So that is going to be A. Okay. Alright, so these are standard form. So these are graphing, you guys. So first we have standard form. So with standard form, one thing you guys should look for is the vertex find the vertex, and then look at some characteristics to help you guys whittle down your answer choices. So to find our vertex, the x-coordinate of the vertex is x equals negative b over 2a. So our a value is negative 1, our b is 4, and our c is negative 8. So negative 4 times 2 times negative 1. Negative 4 over negative 2, which is 2. So our x value of our vertex is 2. Now to find our y value, we just plug this into the formula to find our y value. So 2 squared is 4, so negative 4 plus 8 minus 8, which is negative 4. So our vertex is going to be 2 comma negative 4. So, and one thing to notice, you guys, because our a value is negative, so it's less than 0, that means our graph is also going to open down. We also know that the y-intercept is going to be negative 8. So let's go find all this, right? Well, this graph is definitely 2, negative 4, and it has a y-intercept of negative 8, and it opens down, so that one looks good. That one opens up, you guys, so that wouldn't be it. This one also opens up, so that wouldn't be it. That one opens down, but that's not 2 and negative 4. So it would be A. That's our vertex, right? Right there. Okay. Vertex form. Okay, so notice, you guys, for vertex form, it's written like this, and this h value is the opposite when you guys write it as a coordinate. Look, that's negative h, this is h, right? K's are the same. So if this is our vertex form, the opposite of 3, you guys, is negative 3, and we keep this the same, which is going to be 4. Also 2, notice your guys' a value is positive, which means your graph is going to open up. So which graph opens up and has a vertex of negative 3, 4? Not that one. Negative 3, 4, that looks good, and it opens up. So this one looks to be good. Nope, not the same vertex, and nope, not the same vertex. So your answer would have been B. Okay, this one, so factored form. So the lovely thing about factored form, you guys, is you can find your guys' x-intercepts of these. So if you set y equals to 0, so just find the values of x that makes both of these 0. That's at negative 3 and at negative 5. So we know on this graph there exists the x-intercepts of your guys' graph. And notice, you guys, you got a negative right there, which means it's going to open down, right? It's going to open down because a value is negative. So it can't be A because that opens up. It can't be B because that opens up. Now this looks good. It has x-intercepts at there, and it opens down, and this one opens up. So it's going to be C. Remember, locate your guys' x-intercepts. Okay, moving on. Now we're at quadratic formula. So for quadratic formula, you guys gotta use this formula, right? Remember the story, negative boy could not decide whether or not to go to the radical party. The boy was square, which is why he missed out on 4 awesome chicks, and the party was all over at 2 a.m. So identify your guys' A, B, and C. So A is 2, B is 1, and C is negative 4, and then just plug them into this formula and solve. So we got negative, well, it's really n because it's an n variable. Negative 1, following the formula, right? Plus and minus b squared, which is going to be 1 squared, minus 4 times a times c, so 4 times 2 times negative 4, all over 2 times a, which is 2 times 2. So negative 1 plus or minus 1 squared is 1. Negative 4 times 2 times negative 4, you guys, that is positive 32. 2 times 2 is 4. Negative 1 plus or minus square root of 33 all over 4. So this, you guys, is going to be A. That one's going to be A. 15, same deal. So A equals 5, B equals negative 2, C is equals to 4. So B is equals to negative b, so negative rb, which is negative 2, plus and minus rb, negative 2 squared, minus 4 times a times c, 4 times 5 times 4, all over 2 times a, which is 2 times 5. Negative 2 is 4, plus and minus, negative 2 squared is 4. Negative 4 times 5 times 4, you guys, that is negative 80, all over 2 times 5, which is 10. So you got 4 plus or minus square root of negative 76, all over 10. Now, let's simplify the square root of negative 76. So we know square root of negative 76, you guys, is the square root of 76i. So now let's break this down. 2 times 38, 2 times 19. There's a pairs of 2's, a leftover of a 19. So we're going to really have 2, because that's the pair, square root of leftover 19i. So that is what square root of negative 76 is. So 4 plus or minus 2 square root of 19i all over 10. And then, because all three of these numbers, you guys, they're even, we can divide top and bottom by 2. 4 divided by 2, 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1, so there's nothing there. 10 divided by 2 is 5. And I'm sorry about that, you guys. I realized when I did the negative times negative 2, I changed it to a 4 for some reason. So it should have been a 2, 2, 2, and then 2 divided by 2 makes it a 1. So this would be our answer, which would be A. Plus and minus, you guys, would be the plus and minus of that. Okay, now we gotta complete this square. So to complete this square, you guys, you gotta move the constant to the right and then add b over 2 squared to both sides. Then you guys factor, and then you guys solve for x from there. So move the constant over, so we're going to move subtract 1 from both sides. So we're going to do p squared minus 4p. We're going to add this little placeholder equals negative 1 plus this little placeholder. Now, b over 2 squared. The b value, guys, is negative 4. So what's negative 4 over 2 squared? Well, negative 4 over 2, you guys, is negative 2, and raise negative 2 to the second power, that would be 4. So we now know to add 4 to both sides. And then that will enable us, you guys, to factor this, which would be negative 2 and negative 2. So p minus 2 times p minus 2, which is p minus 2 squared. That's why it's called completing the square, you guys, because we are going to get raised to the second power at some point. And all of this is equal to negative 1 plus 4, which is 3. So now let's solve for p. Square root both sides. P minus 2, we get plus and minus radical 3, and then add 2 to both sides. P is going to equal to 2 plus or minus radical 3, which is b. That one's going to be b. Okay, so we're going to skip 17 and 18. Now we're going to go for 19. Okay, so for 19, you guys, this is where you got to multiply top and bottom by the complex conjugate, which is the opposite of this sign only. So 1 minus 3i, multiply it to top and to bottom. So distribute. And then since you multiply by the complex conjugate, you guys, these two numbers you can multiply, and you can only multiply these two. It's because when you guys multiply by the complex conjugate, the middle terms will cancel. So let's go about doing this. Negative 6 times 1, negative 6. Negative 6 times negative 3i, 18i. Negative I times 1, negative I, and negative I times negative 3i, you guys. That's positive 3i to the second power. And then bottom, 1 times 1 is 1. 3i times negative 3i is negative 9i squared. Now remember, the I to the seconds, you guys, they become negative 1. So if you guys multiply those respectively, we're going to get negative 6. 18i minus I is positive 17i. 3 times negative 1 is minus 3. All over 1, negative 9 times negative 1, positive 9. So combine like terms up top, negative 9 plus 17i all over 10. And that's going to be A. That one is going to be A. Okay, 20. So when you guys simplify powers of I, you guys just have to remember this I1, negatives in the middle, right? You can write these down. Write I1, and then negatives in the middle. Middle. And just remember I to the 0, you guys, is just equals to 1. So whenever you guys have these, just divide the power by 4, divide it by 4, and then see what the remainder is. And that remainder will be the new power to your I. 4 goes into 5 once. 4 goes into 12 3 times. And as you guys can see, we have a remainder of 0. This is going to be the new power of the I. And I to 0 is 1 for C. Okay. Skip those. So now we're at 24. So this one, you guys, when we have a divisor that has a coefficient that's not 1 or the degree is not 1, we gotta use long division. So 6a minus 9, 12a to the third minus 18a squared plus 7. So we gotta figure out what times 6a will give us 12a to the third, and that's 2a to the second. We distribute this to both of those, so we get 12a to the third. 2a squared times negative 9, you guys, that's negative 18a squared, and then we subtract this from both. Now when we subtract, these cancel, and as you guys can see from here, a negative times a negative makes this a positive. So negative 18 plus 18a squared, that's just 0. And we drop down to 7. So as you guys can see, all we have is a remainder of 7. So we can't do anything else more, so we got 2a squared plus the remainder of 7 all over the divisor 6a minus 9. So what are we left with? We are left with A. A would be our answer for that one. Fairly short long division problem. But if you guys look at practice 1, it's a bit longer, right? Okay, let's try 25. So because this has a coefficient of 1 and a degree of 1, this enables you guys to use synthetic division. So remember, you guys have to write down the opposite of that number, which is 10. Now remember, for synthetic division, you have to remember all of the degrees have to be here. 4, 3, 1, and 0. We are missing the degree of 2. So we got to insert that by putting a coefficient of 0 for that n to the second power, because it's not there really, right? So write down all the coefficients of those. 1, negative 10, 0, 6, and negative 50. 1 times 10 is 10, add 0, 0 times 10 is 0, add 0, 0 times 10 is 0, add 6, 6 times 10, 60, add 10. So we got a remainder of 10. Now remember, the degrees of these, you guys, or more precisely this one, it's 1 less than what we started with. So that's n to the fourth. This is going to be n to the third, n to the second, and no n. So our final answer is going to be n to the third. Don't have to write those because it's just 0 plus 6 plus 10, the remainder over the divisor, n minus 10. Which seems to be A. That one seems to be A. Okay, here. So we have a degree of 3, you guys, and there's only one term, so that is what we call a cubic monomial, which is C. Here we have a degree of 1, which is linear, you guys, and 2 terms, which is binomial. Linear, binomial. If it's a degree of 0, that's what we call constant. Degree of 2, that's what we call quadratic, right? For terms, if it's third term, we call those trinomials, and 4 and above for degrees and terms, you guys, we just say 4th degree polynomial, 4-term polynomial and all that. Okay, here. So you guys have to remember this. That tells you guys your behavior. Even positive is up, up. odd is left hand side is down, right hand side is up. Even negative is down, down, and negative odd is left hand up, right hand down. So for this one, you guys, we got positive. The coefficient of the leading degree is positive, and we got a power that's odd. So if it's positive odd, that means it's going to look like this one, you guys. So the left-hand side should be down, and the right-hand side should be up. So remember, if it says as x approaches negative infinity, that's talking about the left-hand side, and as x approaches in positive infinity, that's talking about the right. So we're looking for when does the left-hand side say it's going down, and when does the right-hand say it's going up. Well, left-hand side going down, not this one. Okay, left-hand side going down, right? This is down, that's good, but this also says the right-hand side going down, so that's wrong. Left-hand side going down, and the right-hand side going up. So it is going to be C, right? Left-hand side down, right-hand side going up. So f of x's are talking about up and down, x's are talking about going left or right. Alright, let's look at 29. So this one's negative, even. So negative, even, you guys, that's talking about going down, down, which means the left and right hand side arrows, you guys, f of x's should be going down for both. So what f of x is going down for both? It would be A. Look, down, down. Okay. For this one, look at your guys' end behavior and look at some key characteristics of your graph, right? So it's positive, you guys, and it's an odd degree. So we know it's going down and then up. So first of all, first thing I would look for is which graph shows that the left-hand side's going down and the right-hand side's going up. Well, not this one, not this one. Next, what I would look for, you guys, is this, the y-intercept. So I would look for a y-intercept that is 2, and it looks to be that B seems to be the correct choice. Another thing you guys can also check is these zeros. You can also plug in the zeros into the equation to see if that's truly the 0. If it's not, that probably means it's not the right answer. Okay, skipping 31, 32. Okay, now we're at the rational root theorem, okay? We're at the rational root theorem. So this is where you guys gotta do your P over Q list. And I told you guys to remember this phrase, right? QD pi, so that you remember Q comes before P, right? So you guys have to find your factors of Q, P, and your guys' factors of Q. So factors of 1, you guys, that's plus and minus 1. Factors of Q, you guys, 3 is plus and minus 1 times 3. So take all the numerators and divide it by the denominators, right? This is division. So 1 divided by 1, plus and minus 1. 1 divided by 3, that's just 1/3. So here's our rational roots list, you guys. So we still got to figure out which one will give us a 0. So we plug in one of these using synthetic division to see which one will give us a 0. If we know it's a 0, then that means we know that possible 0 is one of the actual zeros for our problem. So let's say we did synthetic division by picking out just positive 1 first. 3, negative 1, negative 3, and 1. 3 times 1 is 3. Add 2. 2 times 1 is 2. Add negative 1 times 1. Negative 1 add 0. So this 1 is one of our answers because it gave us a remainder of 0, which means that's 0 and it could be, and it's one of our factors. Now remember, because this is a degree of 3, that automatically makes this a degree of 2. And then one less degree. So we have this trinomial now, you guys, but this is something you guys can certainly factor as well. Negative 3 and 2. What two numbers multiply negative 3, but when you add it gives you guys 2, that's 3 and negative 1. But since A is greater than 1, we gotta factor this by grouping. 3x squared plus 3x minus x minus 1. Group. And you guys factor out 3x to get x plus 1. Factor out a negative 1 to get x plus 1. So our factors are 3x minus 1 and x plus 1. Now we have to solve for x though, right? We gotta find our zeros. So what value of x would make that whole thing become 0? -1. So x has to equal to -1. What value of x would make that whole thing go to 0? If you're good with fractions, that would be -1. That would be positive 1/3. If some of you guys can't do that in your guys' head, then just set it equals to 0 and then solve from there, right? If you can't do it right from your guys' head. So our three answers are 1, -1, and 1/3. And that has this rational zeros list, possible ones. So our answer is going to be D. Our answer is going to be D. Alright, 34, finding all our zeros again. P over Q, right? This are P, this are Q. Find the factors of P and Q. So factors of 5, plus and minus 1 and 5, and plus and minus 1 and 5. They're both 5, right? So 1 divided by 1 is 1. 5 divided by 1 is 5. 1 divided by 5, that's 1/5. And 5 divided by 5, that's 1, but that's already in the list, so we're really just dealing with this, you guys. Those are possible rational zeros. Now, to find the remainder, we gotta figure out which one is a 0 by doing synthetic division to see if it will give us a remainder of 0. Let's try out 1. 5, -29, 19, and 5. Drop down the 5, multiply, add, multiply, add, multiply, add. So 1 is, again, one of our zeros. Now, remember when you guys do synthetic division and you hit it, it's 1 degree less than this to start with. So x squared and x. So we really have 5x squared minus 24x minus 5 all equals to 0. And then you guys factor this and find your guys' 0 by doing your guys' a is greater than 1 method. 5 times -5, -25. B term, -24. Two numbers that multiply to -25, but when added gives you guys -24, that's -25 and 1. But since a is greater than 1, we gotta do our factoring by grouping. Group. We can factor out a 5x from there to get x minus 5, and we can factor out, well, nothing we can factor out, so we can only factor out a 1 then. 5x plus 1, x minus 5 equals 0. What value of x would make that whole parenthesis 0? That would be if x equals to 5. What value of x would make that whole thing equals 0? That's x equals -1/5. And again, if you're not good with fractions, then just set that thing equals to 0 to solve for that. And you would still get the same answer. So our answers are 1, -1/5, and 5. 1, -1/5, and 5. So our answer would be A. Our answer would have been A. Yep. There's your guys' rational root theorem. Okay, so with these, now we're going to perform the indicated operation. So you guys, we got the g function minus the f function. So take your g function and subtract the f function. So we got x squared minus 5x minus 1, which is going to be A. That one's going to be A. 36. G function, multiply it by your guys' h function. So your g function is 3n plus 4. And multiply it by your guys' h function, which is n to the third plus n squared. Do your guys' double distribution. So 3n to the fourth plus 3n to the third, 4n to the third plus 4n squared. Combine these. 3n to the fourth plus 7n to the third plus 4n squared, which is C. That one's going to be C. Okay, so this is function composition. So this is g of f of x. Okay, now let's replace this f of x, you guys, for the f of x function, which is x minus 4. So this shows you guys have to plug in this x minus 4 into the g function. So everywhere we see an x in the g function, it now became the x minus 4. So this is really 2 times x minus 4 minus 1. 2x minus 8 minus 1, which is 2x minus 9. That's B. 38. So again, function composition, you guys. H of g of 3. So first, start from the inside. We plug in 3 into g. So plug in 3 into here, you guys. 3 plus 3, which is 6. So we know g of 3, you guys, that is now 6. Now this is great. Now plug in 6 into your guys' h function. So h of 6 is equals to 6 to the third minus 5 times 6. 6 times 6 times 6, that is 216 minus 5 times 6, which is minus 30. 216 minus 3, guys, that's 186. And that is our answer, D. And lastly, inverse function, you guys. So set the function equals to y. And then you guys switch the variables. And now you guys solve for your new y. Subtract 1 to both sides. To get rid of this third power, you guys, you cube root both sides. So you got the cube root of x minus 1 equals y plus 1, and then subtract 1 to both sides. So our inverse function is going to be cube root of x plus 1 minus 1, which is b. That is going to be our inverse function. So set it equals to y, switch the variables, and then solve for your new y. 40. Set it equals to y. Switch your guys' x and y variables, and now solve for your new y. I don't like this fraction, so I'm going to multiply both sides by 7. 7x equals this 7 and that 7 cancel, so all left with is 3y minus 9, and I'll just solve for y. Minus, subtract 9 to both sides, divide both sides by 3. So your new inverse is going to be 7x minus 9 all over 3, which is D. So that's your guys' practice test number 2. So good luck studying, you guys, and, just work hard and study, all right? Good luck, everyone. Peace.